everyone, and welcome to American Shade. I'm Brittany King, your host and your girl. And today we have a very special episode. Today, I brought together some podcasters and YouTube content creators to discuss the good, the bad, and the ugly of having these platforms. And also, why does it seem like everyone and their moms has a YouTube channel and a podcast right now? I'm interested. I'm sure you are. But first, we're going to get into some brief intros. But I want to welcome my panel. How are you guys? How are you guys doing?
Great. Happy to be here.
Doing well.
Good. Awesome.
Doing pretty awesome.
So I'm going to ask each of you to state your name, your podcast or YouTube channel, and then just a little bit about it, like the objective and the theme of it. So for me, if people are just discovering me right now with this video, my name is Brittany King. My YouTube channel is American Shade. And the objective of my platform is to curate a space where various point of views can come and engage in nuance, good faith, objectivity from topics from race, social issues, current events, pop culture, all in the efforts to move the needle within the American divide. So that is American Shade, and we will go with Jason next.
All right, cool. Is my audio sounding okay for starters?
Great.
Okay, cool. So my channel and all my handles are Volofu, as shown on my in parentheses. But my show and a series on my YouTube channel is Side by Side with Jason. So I'm trying to enable the world to access raw township stories, perspectives, and reflections. Townships are a specific ghetto in a South African context, formed out of apartheid South Africa, an era of segregation. So I'm providing a window into some perspectives and experiences in the townships by hosting a bunch of people on my podcast, and basically taking people along for my unlearning journey as I live in the townships. So I'm one of like three people amongst three white people amongst approximately 100,000 Black residents in the township that I live in. So we're talking about like highly densely populated, low income urban environments, and basically trying to bridge sides of the city and sides of the story in terms of race relations and economic transformation.
Awesome. We'll go with Jaimi next.
Amazing. I am Jaimi Alexander. I pretty much can be found everywhere in Jaimi Alexander, and there's the spelling. This is also my YouTube channel. I have different shows and concepts on my YouTube channel, but my podcast is Kings Speak, where I interview men, Black men, on emotional intelligence, self-mastery, and brotherhood, because at the time I started it, I felt like men needed a platform. So I have such amazing and evolved men sharing their stories, things that they've overcome, lessons, and just insight from a man's perspective. And, you know, with me doing the interview, I try to bring in the woman's perspective and ask from a more feminine way, but just to bring out different nuances and colors from the men, so I can bridge the gap between understanding between men and women, because I think sometimes that gets lost in all of these narratives and what everybody needs to be doing and how people should be. So just to kind of soften that talk and have healthy, valuable, evolved, transformative conversations has just been amazing. And then right behind Kings Speak, I have Queens Glean, because we're gleaning this information from the men and then speaking about it from a woman's perspective. So that's my little 2-in-1 podcast.
All right. So now, okay. So Xavier, you're next. Go ahead.
Hi, how's it going, everybody? My name's Xavier Bonilla. I am the host of the podcast Converging Dialogues, which I've had for about 1.5 years now. The goal of the podcast is to basically have conversations with different types of scientists, experts, historians, social scientists, people that do biology, all these different types of areas, fields of study, and to have difference of opinion, so people can have a kind of a whole continuum of ways of understanding things about the natural world, about psychology, sociology, some politics. So the idea is to have different perspectives and different points of view. So that's kind of the aim, the arc of the podcast. I would say that it's been a lot of fun thus far, and yeah, I think that's what I do. That's my night job. My day job is I'm a clinician and I do clinical psych work, and so that's my day job.
Awesome. And then we'll go with Michael.
Hello, thank you for having me. My podcast is Where We Go Next. The tag is it's a podcast for curious people. I struggle with the tagline because really the podcast is kind of all over the place in terms of the guests I have on and the topics I discuss. Whether it's talking about free speech on college campuses or how one goes about navigating the internet as a blind person. I had the head of LinkedIn's accessibility on, a really wonderful guy by the name of Jennison Asuncion, who is blind, and he talked to me about what it's like going on the internet as a blind person and why accessibility is important. I've talked to immunologists about the COVID-19 vaccines, best ways to resolve political conflicts. I'm most passionate about talking with people about whatever topic they're really passionate about, interested in, or an expert in, and trying to find common ground, whether we have a lot to start or perhaps less. Like one of the people I spoke with was one of the heads of a conservative group that was formed to fight climate change. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Okay, let me get this guy on, see what that's all about. But I try to have really good faith discussions where I meet people where they are. And then if possible, try to get to what I'm going to steal a phrase from Amanda Ripley. She's a writer, what she calls the understory, or like the thing behind the thing. Like, okay, whatever topic we're talking about, there's almost always usually something behind it, right? So like when I brought on someone to speak on the mRNA vaccines, I was like, okay, we can talk about the vaccines, but really the understory of this conversation is how do we address this to people who are perhaps skeptical of the vaccines or are wanting to take the vaccines but are still really worried, if I take them, am I still going to be safe? And so like I try to find like something that kind of can be the skeleton for the whole conversation. But beyond that, I just love talking to people about all different kinds of topics. And yeah, I'm glad to be here today. Thanks for having me, Brittany.
Awesome. Thank you all for those intros. And I'm also really excited about this discussion, and I want to have like an authentic, candid conversation on the life of having podcasts and YouTube channels, discuss our challenges, our burnouts, what we've learned about ourselves while having these platforms, and even discuss if you've wanted to quit. I know I have, and maybe you want to share that, who knows? But first, let's talk about us though. I am interested in why you guys started your podcast and when you started it, and yeah. And why did you start it? What pushed you to do it? Okay. I can start.
I'm like, I don't mind. I don't want to always be the one, but I'll talk.
Yeah, I'll start. Like mine's kind of brief. Like I started this YouTube channel October 2020. So this year it will be 2 years. But I had a podcast actually called American Shade at NYU when I was in graduate school, on the radio station, WNYU 89.1 FM, shout out. But it was basically like the same premise, like race issues. I would talk about social issues. I would even talk about movie reviews, stuff like that. I would talk about Dave Chappelle. I talked about Kanye West's album, and I reviewed that with Sunday Best. And I would bring on people, and it was people with different point of views than mine. So it was just audio though, which was a different ball game than YouTube. So the reason why I relaunched YouTube was because during 2020, like that was when quarantine was happening. That was when the pandemic hit, and there was a lot going on, and I had a lot to say. So while I was getting published with like my writings in different publications, there's things I wanted to like communicate like instantly to the public. Even though I might, at that point, I had like, I don't even know, like 100 subscribers. But after one of my pieces went viral on Twitter, that pushed a lot of people to my channel. And then I got more following with that. So really the reason why I did it, I think quarantine and the pandemic has a lot to say with that. And it kind of pushed me to do it. And also there's so much going on. I had so much to say. So that's why I started my channel.
Yeah, that's amazing. I hope I'm following you on Twitter. But I want to get more into your stuff. I'm saying that. But yeah, so I come from the world where I've been doing this a really long time. Different subjects, different shows. I am an on-camera host. I did do the Hollywood thing, lots of red carpets and interviews and TV host, like all of these things. So talking and interviewing, all this has been who I was before podcast was a thing. I had In the Spotlight with Jaimi Alexander, and this was, what was it? Do you remember Blog Talk Radio? Like, I did that show for like 3 years. So I had a show on Blog Talk Radio, and again, we were on our phones, like conversing, having the thing. It wasn't this, and this was like 2011. But after doing all that, and after Buzz TV and blah blah blah, these kind of interviews and talking has kind of been my outlet, my channel to speak to people. So King's Speak came to mind in 2016, which again was ahead of the time, before people were talking about men and mental health, especially Black men. So it was a live event, because I've always done live events. So I would do a 5-course meal, Scotch tasting, and just get men together to talk in person. And so, fast forward, it was kind of a blur since then, but then it's kind of the same thing. 2020 happened, and I didn't want to drop just doing the events and bringing people together. I think some of us were like losing our heads, and I was like, well, I'm not going to just sit here. So I was like, well, let me get my guys on and start doing this from YouTube, and at least keep King's Speak going, so we can all talk through this thing on a various amount of subjects, but, providing content while we were all quarantining and doing everything. So it was kind of like I had to get it together from a live event, and I just put it on YouTube and made it a podcast available on Apple and Spotify and stuff, just because that's where we were at the time. So
awesome. Anyone else? Y'all are gonna go.
I guess I can go next. Yeah. So maybe we'll like just I don't know if we're all seeing the same format in terms of layout, but yeah.
This is a class.
Yeah.
like Brady Bunch order.
Yeah, exactly, something like that. Yeah, I also related to the pandemic, no doubt, and a lot to do with the summer riots in response to the George Floyd murder. I thought it was like really interesting, this kind of racial awakening that was happening, not only in the States, but worldwide. And my sister was one of I tend to be the type to want to like not jump to conclusions and rather assess like the whole thing. I wasn't like explicitly in my mind, like into like, let me explore all the different perspectives and into like polarization as topics, until sort of digging into that space, like it kind of prompted that. But what I did do is I posed a question on Facebook asking why was South Africa not doing any protests or marches for racial equity, because it's the most unequal society in the world, and especially a city like Cape Town, it's one of the most unequal cities in the world. So it was like, even Black people are not like voicing, besides quote unquote allies. So I was like, what's going on here? And I just posed that as a question. And that actually got like a decent amount of comments and discussion going. So I felt like it would be a great thing to just like get the conversation started. Like, I mean, obviously race relations has been a conversation ever since South Africa moved into democracy in 1994. But for some reason, like, I think that there's this sort of like don't ask, don't tell kind of like, just people are just uncomfortable about like race-based discussions, especially like white people in South Africa, and probably the same in the States. So I guess in a way I'm kind of like being like modeling for other white suburbanites, like how to just sit in conversations and ask questions and try to piece it all together. So yeah, that's the background.
Powerful.
Awesome.
Well, I think it's interesting hearing everybody's motivations for doing a podcast is it's interesting to find that people want to make their opinions so public. I think that's always fascinating, right? Myself included. Mine is very much similar. I had many friends and even some family members. I had suggested for years I should do a podcast, and I said no. There's a million of them. What do I have to say? I mean, I'm not going to say anything different. Why am I going to do all this time and energy? And I don't know. I don't have like some weird dream to do radio or something. Some people have like some history of wanting to do radio, and that wasn't for me as well. So just media in general is not like a thing for me. But yeah, I think basically I'm lazy to write. I'm okay. I'm a okay writer, but I wish I could write more, but I have no patience for it. So I write a few things here and there, but that's where my perfectionism kind of comes out in writing. So I'm never happy with what I write. So I said, well, I'm okay at conversations. And so I wanted to, instead of consume so much information during 2020, the pandemic, I said, well, maybe I'll give this podcast thing a shot. And I was very purposeful in wanting to put something out into the world instead of just consuming information. And so I wanted to be very purposeful in doing that. And I still try to be extremely purposeful in having different types of conversations. I'm the boring kind of centrist, center left person. So I do not enjoy culture wars topics or one or two topics over and over and over and over. That's not my thing. And so I like to try and have a wide range of topics with different types of people, which has been very fruitful for me. And feedback I get is that many people enjoy it as well. Different types of things. That's not to say I won't talk about culture wars or race or gender. I do, just very, very limited and very precise in what I'm trying to ask or ponder or figure out. And so it's usually less of me and more of the person. But I, of course, will give my own ideas or opinions every now and then depending on the guest and the topic and things like that nature. So
Nice.
I'm surprised that you never wanted to go into radio, Xavier, because you have the most soothing NPR voice. Whenever you talk, it sounds like you're talking about the opening of like a new 5-star restaurant in France or the history of a small coastal town in Maine. It's so.
I think
perfect.
the same about your voice, Michael.
Yeah, Michael has a nice voice. Yeah, I've been told that before. It's always strange when people say that, but I guess so.
Yeah, like I want to, I want to hear like the back. Like I want like cool jazz music to play behind you, Xavier, while you talk about it. It would be great.
Should we leave you guys alone? Or
I mean,
like we
give you guys a room.
Like I can just jump off.
He started it. He started.
Light a candle.
Private Zoom room.
Yeah, I echo a lot of what Xavier was saying in terms of why I started mine. I mean, I think the pandemic definitely had to do with a lot of it. I started recording episodes in August of 2020, and my first episode released late September of that year. And I'm probably one of the most extroverted people you'll ever meet. Like, if I'm alone for too long, I get sad. Like, I need to be with other people. Even when I do my work, I have to be in a cafe just so that I can hear like people talking and just feel like the energy of other people, which was very difficult to do in 2020. And so one, it was really just an outlet for me to talk with other people. And two, I was getting frustrated with the way we as a nation were having conversations, either at a national level or even among my friends around, I think, like really important topics. It felt like everyone was either freezing up or was just parroting opinions of whoever they were voting for or whoever told them how to vote. And that's fine. I mean, have the opinions you're going to have, vote however you want to vote. But it didn't feel like there was a lot of there. Like if I would have just scratched their opinion just like a little bit, there would have been nothing behind it. And it felt like people were saying things in order just to get along or because that's what they were supposed to say. And that's all well and good, but I am most energized by talking with people who have really thought through their positions. and people who are open to having their positions, gently prodded or explored. Again, going back to the whole understory thing, the thing behind the thing. But I think the pandemic was really the kick in the butt that I needed to get started. And so I'm really grateful for that, because recording a podcast every week or every other week, it kind of fluctuates depending on my work schedule. But it really adds a lot of structure to my life, because there's just a lot of prep that's involved. And then the editing afterwards is so intense. And I can hate it sometimes, because it is such a time sink, but I really love it because I always feel great after it's done. It's kind of like going to the gym. Like, I loathe the thought of going, but after I go, I'm like, I'm glad I went. And I don't want to take over the show, Brittany, but I did have a question for Jaimi, if you're cool with me asking.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. So Jaimi, you said you come from the entertainment world initially, and you did a lot of on-camera stuff, and you come from, if I could say, the kind of more traditional, this is how we do things, sort of Hollywood, you work your way up, you get through this, and then you're on screen, and yada, yada, yada. And I was just wondering, how do you contrast your experiences in that world versus this world? Do you have a preference of one over the other? What do you think the strengths are of what you're doing now versus perhaps strengths or things you miss about the world that you first came up in? I'm just really curious how you compare and contrast those two things.
That's a good. Yeah, go
I was
ahead.
going to say that was literally a question I was going to ask you about, like, the differences of the world. So go ahead. Yes, interested.
Yeah. For me, I feel like, because I would consider myself a professional in this field, it's still one and the same. And I was really happy to be able to bring, like, my training, the structure, the skill to just coming on YouTube and to just podcasts, and it's almost the same. It's kind of just minus the production, but that's also something that I dabbled in. Being an on-camera host, you kind of need to know everything. So, I used to host the live stage at the NAB show, which is the National Association of Broadcasters. So it's where everybody comes and brings all their brand new tech for all of the big movie studios and everybody to use for special effects and all of these things. And doing a show like that, I also had to produce my own show. So there's this kind of totality of knowing how to put things together, how to show up. There's kind of a dance about how to fill in, or if something goes wrong, or if you're the only one left on screen, or if somebody can't make, like, it's a whole thing. So this is actually a lot easier almost, because it's a one-woman show, and but knowing and understanding the totality of entertainment and how hosting and interviewing and stuff works, and some structure, because there's times, because my ear is a little picky, especially, it's like, I do get it, not annoyed, but I'm like, yeah, everybody does have a podcast and not everybody's good at it, because I can just hear, I'm like, damn, y'all are talking over each other. There was no intro here. There's no segue here. You're all over the place. Like, there is a skill to conversation, in my ear and opinion. So it's different for me, just not having the structure and the producers, like, telling me what to do, having the whole team and the ease of just showing up as a host or whatever, but the professionalism and the skill is what I'm excited to kind of, like, bridge. And that's what makes me feel good and confident about anything that I do when it comes to being on YouTube and podcasting. Because for me, it's almost second nature for a lot of different reasons. I've been immersed in the nuts and bolts of that world for quite some time. So it's kind of nice. That's kind of, I don't know if that answers the question, but that's kind of, where I'm coming out with it.
And with that, I want to ask you guys about, like, what's, like, the most annoying thing or challenging thing about having a podcast. But first, I want to know, what is the best thing about having a podcast to you? I'm going to start with Xavier. This is the classroom. Xavier, you're up. You're up now.
It's fine. The best thing, I mean, it's a big privilege, it's a big honor, for me, at least. I'm able to talk with people that are experts in their field, or even not, even people. I talk to writers and people in different fields of study and avenues, but every time I always feel like it's a big honor and a big privilege because I'm learning something from the other person. I'm learning about their experience. I'm learning about their perspective, their expertise. And one of the things that I have is I have a big curiosity for trying to understand all of that. And so it's less about me and more about the other person. And so I typically don't have an agenda, right? So if it's someone that has a new book coming out, or if it's someone that's, written a bunch of scientific papers in a particular area of study, that's all I'm focused on. That's all I, am looking to try and maximize. And that's a big honor. It's a big privilege. And so it's fantastic that I can read a book. As I'm reading, I'm having questions, or I'm having thoughts, or I wonder what this is, or how could this be expanded more? And then I can talk to the person and ask them all about that usually. So, I just see that as a big honor.
Awesome.
I love that you said that, Xavier, because there's a lot of what you said and what Michael said that has me in love with being able to podcast and be able to talk to people, is because, being an interviewer, I want to hear what other people have to say. I want to understand. I think, Michael, you used the word gentle prodding on people's opinions and understanding. And I'd love to go deeper. I'd love to know why people think the way they think and why they feel the way they feel. And you're right, Xavier, it's about them. I just want to bring out the ability for them to share their colors, their nuances, their opinions, because in so many, when we talk about mass media and people craving something different, there is kind of like a box and a tightness and a bit of an agenda on some of the stuff that we're seeing as far as mass media. But when you come to podcasting, you can get the real from people. You create the space. My goal is to create freedom for people to be able to be themselves. We don't have to agree. I don't have to love everything that you're saying or even be in full understanding of it for me to excavate what might be important to you. Because if you think that way and you feel that way, and this is your perspective, not only are there other people out there who can relate and have the same understanding as you and find that you're a mirror to them, but it gives other people an opportunity to learn. Like, I think we should be a little bit more open to learning. Again, even if you don't want to jump on the same boat with somebody as what they believe, learning and understanding people has been one of the most valuable things in my life. So for King Speak, even talking with men, I used to work in spiritual healing and intuitive life coaching with someone. And when I would post my things, the men would come in like, well, when are you going to do something for us? And I was like, oh, y'all care about spiritual healing? Like, y'all mental. I thought this was a girl thing. You know what I'm saying? When we think about this, it's like sister circles and, spa days, and it's just very feminine, but we're all masculine and feminine within, and men are humans. And I wanted to hear more about what men had to say about how they feel. It's like this taboo thing, like men don't talk about their feelings, and they don't, but are we asking? And so creating space for people to be themselves is like such a powerful thing. And that's why I think podcasting, and this is one of the best things about having a platform, is you're free. You can be the leader of the person who gives space for this kind of freedom and dialogue that's not typical. And we need that. That's not optional, so if the mass media is not giving it, let's go. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Nice.
I want to and something you said there, Jaimi, because I think there's a through line that I think that goes through all of our podcasts thematically. And if you go to the age before social media, before the internet kind of went mainstream, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I think what it means to be alive is really just to hear stories and tell stories. I come from a storytelling background, and I really think that that's what makes us who we are, that most of our lives are spent telling stories to other people or hearing stories from others, right? Now, whether or not the story is hearing your buddy talk about the movie he went to that weekend, or the story of your country, the story of you as a people, the story that you hear about your ancestors, the story that you hear about whatever the topic may be. And when it was just mainstream media before podcasts and YouTube and TikTok, et cetera, right? Like, the ways in which we were told we could be fill in the blank, right? A man, a woman, black, white, Latino, whatever you want to put in that blank, the stories that we were told about the ways we could be who we are were very limited. And the ways that limited us, and especially people who have traditionally been marginalized, is not only does it affect how people perceive you, because they're just puppeting the stories they saw on TV or in movies and then telling those stories in real life, but it also, whether consciously or subconsciously, limits the ways that we can understand ourselves. Because if the stories that we see on TV or in movies are continuously telling us, right, to go to what you're talking about, Jaimi, this is how you're to be a man. This is the only way you can be a man. And if you're not like this and you're a man, there's something wrong with you. And so you stuff that inside. And I think one of the great things about podcasting and all social media in general is that it finally allows so many of us to come out and say, you know what, the stories that we were told for so long just don't represent me. And we're meeting each other and talking with each other in ways that we couldn't before. And we're all realizing that the stories were limiting all of us. And it seems to be like a real through line for all of our podcasts. And anyway, I just wanted to point that out. I think it's a really cool thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well
For
said.
sure.
I love it.
For sure. Jason, were you gonna go?
Yeah, I think I have 2 points. I don't know if I can choose which one's better, but I've loved the process of learning more about myself and what I have to offer to the world through this, because it is a process of getting feedback. I think we look at sort of the data and the anecdotal feedback from listeners in terms of what they appreciated and what they found valuable, and what were unique competencies we brought as hosts to elicit certain information or facilitate certain tricky conversations. So I think it's been a great, like even just how to brand myself, like, and how I even think about my broader organization called Side by Side and the bridging work that we do. We also do community-based tourism, but just trying to make it one cohesive thing. So that was like, now that I'm going to try to create like a media company associated with my community-based tourism bridge, and now I'm doing like a bit of an ideological or narrative-based bridge. Like, how am I going to make that thematically continuous? So that's been a cool learning experience from my side. And then I think just in general, I think I was starting to get into a lot of the like IDW, different podcasts, just more from like a curious to see how they go about these tricky conversations and what their differences are. Like, so that was like, I guess all of us in the pandemic found some hobby horse that we went far too deep on. So that was one of mine, was just like consuming more podcasts. And I just kind of fell in love with like this long form format. I think I'd gotten so tired of like these little sound bites and images being flashed. So like, I hardly watch like any TikTok. I like avoid like YouTube shorts. Like, for some reason, I just find them like distasteful. I mean, they're like, or at least like I have that little bit in the back of my mind about like, this is some sort of attention hack and I like need to fight this or just avoid it. And so somehow like the long form format, I'm like, oh, this is cultivating a capacity within me to listen and pay attention for longer periods of time. And I can actually bring this to more in-person encounters and things like that. So I also really appreciate that.
Yeah, my sentiments echo everyone's. Like, I simply just enjoy discussing topics that I find important and then talking to people that I find interesting and have something to say. And I love the fact that I can utilize like my writing and journalism degrees at like my agency, because with journalism, it's an awesome chance to land an opportunity with a network to talk about certain things like what's going on, current events, pop culture, whatever it is. But what I've come to find and what everyone knows, especially with mainstream media, it's like they tell you kind of what you're going to say, like the voice you're going to take, the aisle you're going to be on. And with YouTube, I can do my journalism in my own way. That's ethical, that morally aligns with me, that doesn't take sides. And I try to bring as much nuance as I can. And also, I just like having control of all of it and being my own boss. Like, if I want to make a video today, I will. If I don't have to. So I like that comfortability as well. So yeah, I share everyone's sentiments. Now I want to move on to what's challenging about this though. Like, what's the worst parts of it? What's annoying about having a podcast? Have at it. I have a few things, but
Well, Jason, I was kind of relieved to hear you say that you appreciate long format, because I do too, but I admit sometimes I get in my head about it because everything is so 30-second this, da-da-da-da. I'm like, damn, do I need to like make a sound bite of this? How do I succinctly, but like sometimes it makes my head spin a little bit on how to market or get certain amounts of attention if you're not willing to sit down and listen to the conversation. If you can't do that, like, I don't know,
Yeah.
So it's almost a relief to hear you say that. And that, for me, some of the things that annoy me about having a podcast is I cannot stand when I go on Twitter or Instagram and I see this. Can I cuss on here?
what are you gonna say?
I was gonna say the A word. I was just going. It's not
Because
really that
they
bad.
ding weird things.
I don't want to do it, but
if it ain't the
this
F word, we're
ratchet,
good.
no, there's a ratchet content.
It's
okay?
Sunday, Jaimi.
I mean,
Just kidding.
God knows my heart. And I hate looking at this stuff, and it's so ratchet and so wild, and I'm just like, and then I watch everybody underneath complain about how there's no good content, and everybody's always talking about this, but you're sharing it. Like, this idiot has 1 million views, okay? And I'm not gonna front. I'm not really a marketing genius. I move quick. I need some help. I need somebody to sit down and do some of the other stuff. But it's just kind of like, wow, we spend a lot of time having these they're transformative conversations. You're gonna leave a conversation on King's Speak like, wow, okay, something, but that's not what people are eating. They want junk food. They want chips. They want candy. And it's like, okay, but there's like apples and oranges and they're all organic and it'll benefit your life. But it's like, you'd rather complain and be ridiculous. And then I'm watching these things and it'll be somebody that says something that, to me, I don't really find that profound. And it's just like, oh, she ate and she told it. And I'm thinking like, where are we? I'm making this content because I really think it's important we move on from this. And so, sometimes when I sit under my views that are not so many, it's not about being popular, but it's just like, it takes time, it takes effort. And it's like, oh, this really ain't what you want. You say this is what you want, but you would rather bicker and fight and be strange on the internet about things. And then so on Twitter, when there was this viral post, it was terrible. It was not a read. It wasn't great. There was nothing special about it. Not from, I'm sorry, and so many people. So every time somebody was like, oh, I'm tired of these podcasts and I'm tired of this stuff and I want to see something, I just kept posting. I was like, well, you can eat this. You can watch this. You're going to learn something. These men are not like that, because I think, Michael, you said it, when mass media paints a picture of a type, a culture, a man, a woman, we don't realize how in that box we get stuck in. And then we treat people like that. We can't get out of it. It makes us say things, do things, and function in ways that are inauthentic to who we are. But we're also not, how willing are we to go out there and do something different? So it gets a little frustrating to me. It's just like, okay, well, I'm gonna pause because I done gave y'all 20 episodes and you can eat this first. Cause I need a break. And
Kim like, I'll eat it.
I know, right? I'm like moving around. But it's just like, let me take a break. Cause it's like, 200 people didn't even catch this. So I need a pause, and I'm gonna do that because I have other things going on. And that can be frustrating for me. Like,
yes.
I think,
what do we do?
I think I totally understand that struggle, Jaimi, because what gets the most eyeballs, right? It's the candy. It's the screaming heads on Fox News or CNN. It's fresh and fit. It's people talking about just stereotypes of people and starting arguments and causing so much drama, right? And again, it's kind of the same way. It's like when we're on the road and we see a car crash, it's like we rubberneck, right? Like we want to be like, even if there's that the deep part of our mind that is probably thinking, oh man, I hope they're okay, and what a tragedy. There's that like lizard brain that's like, ooh, a crash. I gotta look. How beat up is this car? Whoa, that's impressive. Blah, blah, right? Like, even though deep down inside in your mind, you're thinking like, I don't want to look at this. Like, this isn't what I want. This isn't making me better. And so that's definitely something that I struggle with too, because I know that if I had on certain guests, or if I worded my podcast titles in a certain way, and use certain hashtags and all these other things, that I could probably get more views. But I think for me, it's like, what do I want to leave the world? And I know that sounds super pretentious, but I literally mean it in terms of like, am I going to be okay with myself, with the content that I'm producing when I die, right? Like, whether or not it changes the world, it will not. But whether or not it changes the world or makes a big splash or whatever, that is less important to me. Whether my podcast episodes get 5 listens or 10 or 10,000 or whatever, I just want to be okay with my own soul when I publish them. So I totally understand the struggle there. And in terms of the most challenging thing about having the podcast, it's really just getting out of my own way. I'm my own worst critic. I get in my head to an insane degree. I overthink everything. Right up until the podcast is about to record, I am struggling with whether or not I should cancel it. I get super imposter syndrome. I'm like, I'm a fraud. They don't want to talk to me. If only they knew more about me, they would cancel. I need to cancel before they cancel. And I get in my head every single time. I never think I do enough prep. There's never enough prep I can do. I just get in these crazy cycles, right? So really, for me, I think the biggest change that I've had is, as I've published more and more episodes, I can kind of trick myself into just looking at those and being like, hey man, you're not that bad. You've published almost 50 episodes. Like, if you were really bad, you wouldn't have gotten this far. Like, I have to tell myself a story to get myself out of my own head. So that's probably the most difficult part.
Can I please insert an amen right here? Really, with what you and Jaimi said, that was my point. So first, yes, with Michael, that's one thing that I hate about, not hate, dislike very greatly about prep, especially when I'm prepping for like panel discussions or one-on-one interviews, is I stress so hard on the scripts. Like, my script is usually 10 or 11 pages long. I just want to make sure that it's long enough to cover an hour or 2 hours or whatever the time frame is for the episode, and that there won't be any dead air, that I make it interesting, that any way that the interviewee goes, I can go with them. And I just get into my own head too, where that process is never enjoyable, really. It's hardly ever enjoyable until I'm sitting with you guys right now and I'm enjoying it in the process. But I think because I over prepare though, and I know I have a lot, ready at hand, I think that's why I can ease in and be present and enjoy it. So it's like a double-edged sword. So with that, yes, I agree. That is something that I need to work on more. And also, I think, Michael, you asked me a questions about when it comes to views when I was on your podcast. I don't know if it was the first episode or the second one, but I remember you said, and correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm getting off, but when you told me, as a Black woman, American commentator on YouTube, do you find it maybe seducing at any time to say the things will get you popularity quicker? And of course I said no, and you laughed because you knew I was going to say no. I hope you knew I was going to say no.
Of course.
But yeah. But I'm not going to lie. Like, Jaimi, I agree. Like, it's not popularity. It's just when you put in so much work with the script. Let's say a script takes a couple of days or 3 days or a week, and then you record, and then you edit, and then you do the thumbnail, which my thumbnail game sucks. Like, I'm not best with marketing. I don't, whatever. Because I can't do the cringeworthy like shock I just can't, I can't do that. So if my videos will suffer for that, then they'll suffer. Okay. But and all that effort you put in, you feel like you're putting your authentic self onto the screen for everyone to see, and it doesn't get much views. It's not like I want 100,000, but 1,000 would be nice. It's just like to know that I'm reaching people. And I'm feeling like I'm not just talking to myself. So Yeah, that's I those are a couple of things that's frustrating. And also last thing I'll say is I think it's challenging, not annoying, but a challenging thing is because we all have lives outside of podcasts, and we all have our own jobs and stuff. Um, and and the thing I love about it is I am my own boss, but the thing that's challenging, I am my own boss. There's no other editor here. There's no other producer or writer. I'm everything. So I think that weight on it also is stressing, but we all go through it. But anyway, yeah, I just have to say, completely agree with what you guys said. Like,
I want to jump in and share with you guys, like, especially as someone who's been doing this, I think you're doing a great job. And I don't want you guys to worry. I want you to trust yourself. So I just speak exceeding amounts of trust in yourself over you guys, because I think the pressure is unnecessary. And not because, I understand how it is to want to study and do this and do that, and that gives you something to rest on. But I'm confident in the both of you that you know exactly what you're doing. And I just want you to release the pressure. Going back to when I used to host these tech shows, I don't know crap about the ins and outs of tech. And here I am hosting there's thousands and thousands and thousands of people here every day listening to me. I'm talking to CEOs of like Avid and all these major, I don't know tech like that. But what I can do is listen and respond. Like, there's so much there's a lot in the dead air. There's a lot in the last thing a person said that you'll intuitively pick up on or grab or respond to or know where the question is. It's like, once you feel like you have your script and you know what you're going to do, there's so much more room. And I just personally think both of you are people that can trust yourselves more, so it doesn't feel so daunting. And then the last thing I want to say about that is, I've been doing interviews and all this stuff over 10 years. There's pretty much never a time where I haven't been nervous first. So I don't think that goes away. So I don't think there's anything wrong with you or like off or whatever, because you might feel nervous before a broadcast. I think that's just what it is. Breathe through it, and you got this. I just had to say that.
Thank you. I will take that.
Release it.
It's right here. It's right here. Anyone else?
I'll say the thing I dislike about the podcast is so I'm like Michael. I think about each conversation in terms of, can I listen to this in 10 years and it be salient, right? I don't want it to age too terribly. And so I want it to last. And I treat it as if it's, if you're writing something or you're making a piece of music or something, that you can feel proud of it later, even if time goes by. So I have that somewhere in the back of my head. Mm-hmm. The biggest thing is, when you're navigating through various waters, you're going to upset some people, and some people aren't going to like what you have to say, or they're not more likely not going to like the person you have on. And I find, because all of my episodes are with a guest, so it's never just by myself. I really, really, the thing that I spend the most time on is the responsibility I have and how much of it I have in talking to certain guests about certain issues. And I can't control what people think or how they interpret, but I want to get the best version of the guest's perspective. And especially if I know it's somewhat, spicy. So, that's all. But the thing that's so frustrating is the guilty by association thing. And then subsequent from that is, well, this person had, or they conversations, or they talked to so-and-so, so maybe I won't talk to this person or whatever. I can't control that, but I try, by the nature and the content and the ethics of, if you will, of my conversation, to say, did I do that? Did I get the best version of this person? I could vehemently disagree with the person that I'm talking to, and many times I do disagree with people I talk to. But do myself and do listeners have a better understanding about the person and then about their ideas? But the thing that's so difficult for me is the guilt by association thing, and the and you know, and I don't ever want to be reckless with you know, what I'm putting out into the world, and I obviously can't control my guests, but as long as sometimes this stuff is happening in real time. So I'm, you know, did I push back on that enough? Did I make sure that I allowed them to clarify? Did I just leave that too open-ended? You know, is that too wide for, you know, and these are things I can't control, but I want to always try and put forth best effort on that end. And so that's probably the thing that's the most exposing, and the thing that I probably dislike the most about doing the podcast. But I try anyways. So hopefully it's an okay job that I do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll try to make mine brief. So just on the long form thing, there's clearly a trade-off. I mean, the shorter you go, probably the larger your audience is probably going to be able to get. But I also think that the audience could be shallower, right? Like, as you're saying, the junk food stuff, you could get a lot of people eating junk food, but they don't necessarily, they might move to the next piece of junk food. Whereas rather, if you like give someone that healthy plate of food, they might be like, this needs to be part of my diet, like all the time, you know, to lead my best life. So yeah, I think it's a matter of like having really strong relationships that you're actually building with your audience. So I kind of think to myself, would I be able to ask my audience something meaningful? Like, let's say to support a Patreon or to sign a campaign or something like that. And I think that some of those TikTok influencers and things like that, they might not even be able to do that. And if they do manage to get people to answer some call to action, it's probably just by like some very small percentage, just by luck in a way, like some small percentage of a large audience that resonating, or those people being like, well, maybe I'm gonna get something out of it, and now I'm associated, well, like as in like I'm getting, you know, some sort of rep with this influencer and stuff like that. So it just feels like an authentic kind of relationship. On a separate note, what I find frustrating is like, you know, as I said, I live in one of these Black ghettos that has about 100,000 people in it, and I have a lot of conversations and a lot of interactions that are offline, and I have a lot of interesting conversations. Then there's like the ethics, obviously, of just like recording without anyone's consent. So I obviously don't do that. So I'm often just like, oh, it's just so bad, like too bad that I just couldn't have just recorded that moment. And like as soon as you ask someone like, can I turn on a recorder, like it just changes the nature of the conversation so much. And so I feel like I'm just like, whatever. Like I feel like that's almost why the community-based tourism stuff, like it's almost irreplaceable, because you just have to be there in order to like get all the most authentic interactions. But yeah, it like having people on a show. So now I'm kind of like, oh, well, now if I'm gonna be intentional about it, now I feel like I have to be extra intentional about it. I'm gonna be like, I'm gonna script out this person's intro beforehand in order to like, I don't know. I'm just like, am I gonna prepare all these different questions for them? Now it just suddenly feels like a formal thing, whereas like the informal, candid conversation was like had the most resonance for me. So, you know, so I imagine it would have most resonance for listeners too. But yeah, that's what I find frustrating, is that there's just like the ethics of that.
Can I speak? Oh, go ahead.
Sorry.
I was going to say I want to speak to Jason because one little advice, advice for journalism. That's one thing that we're told to do, is to be recording on our little devices, like as we're walking up, and to be like, oh, hey, I'm recording, by the way, and not being like, I'm turning on my recorder, because right when you do that, they tense up and they feel like constricted. So just as some advice, I don't know if you want to get, but also with looking at your, because I was going to ask this question a little later on, but I'll ask it now, like, or just get your thoughts. Looking at your format, I didn't realize, because looking at everyone else's thing, I'm like, oh yeah, like Jason's the only one like really in person. Like you're in the townships, you're asking people the questions, having even panel discussions or group discussions with people or one-on-one interviews in person. And what I liked about it is when you're taking us inside that world authentically, and it's you and it's the people there, you aren't holding any papers, you aren't holding your phone, you're like engaged, you're like really there. And that made me feel like I was there. So I guess I would hate for you to get clinical. That's just my take, because the way you're doing it is, to me, really great. So I don't want you to think, well, now I got to do this. I got to have a camera crew. I got to have a tie, because I will unsubscribe if you do. I'm just kidding. But no, like I think what you're doing is dope. I think it's good and it's refreshing and it's cool. So.
Thank you.
I was gonna say the same thing as Brittany. Yeah, just had to take just same thing. Yeah, it's cool.
Thanks. I mean, you'll see the newest episodes that will be coming out, like, which I feel like can get out more consistently. I was telling them when we were offline, like, is just running everything through OBS, and I just have like a camera switcher, like I do hotkeys, so I make one button one, camera angle 1, button 2, camera angle 2, button 3, and camera. So I get like this I control like a live studio. So, but it is still unscripted, and I guess I am in a bit more like of a curated environment. Like there's artwork in the background, and like you're in a studio. So I'm like, that my like first words always just like, "Yo, welcome to Side by Side Studio." Just like dap it up, and then you just get chatting. I mean, it is a little more like sanitized and like me out in the hood, but it's also kind of like, yeah, just from a production standpoint, so much easier, especially if you need like video, which I feel like I need, given YouTube is like my platform of choice, and also for like also promoting on social media. Maybe that's another thing to talk about, is like the fact that there's like your podcast will basically get zero reach. It's not like they don't work like social media. It's not like when you do something good on a podcast, it starts necessarily getting popular, unless you're like already in like the top 20 podcasts in the world, then it like gets advertised to people. So like the fact that we have to like play this social media game in order to get people onto like something which isn't social media, I mean, which I guess is what a lot of people do anyways. If you're a writer, you post your writing on social media and get them over there. But I mean, I'm just like, we all
that's a good question to ask.
The social media game
is
challenging.
After Xavier, I want to ask that question, because that's good.
All I was going to say was that I would push back a little bit on the long form piece, and that's not because I do long form conversations. That's not why I'm pushing back exclusively. In the beginning I was worried about that same thing. If it's not instant, if it's not like, because everything works in small kind of bite-sized things. But I mean, I found that sometimes my longest conversations are the ones that have the most downloads, the most plays, the most listens, the most all of that. I mean, so if people want to listen to 3.5 hours about German idealism, there's an appetite for that out there. And so I think you'd be surprised. And I mean, I personally, people say, well, why don't you split it up or whatever? And I just release the whole thing. I just release one episode. It's 4 hours and you listen to it when you want. You'd be surprised. You'd be really surprised. I know that there's that kind of meme of everything needs to be 30 seconds, but I think, if you do it, they'll come, they'll come to it and they'll say, oh, wow, this is something that I can't find everywhere else, because it's all bite-sized. So, wow, this person's doing this. And before I did this, I used to do kind of the old school salons, which is, a group of people get together in person. We'd have a meal. We have, a couple bottles of wine, and we pick a topic, and we would just have this kind of discussion about whatever the topic was, and maybe 4, 5, 6 hours. And, we talk about it at someone's house. I mean, people, it's a human thing. So I think if, you can do what you want, do what you want to do. And if you want to do long form, try it. So I would just say that, it's not always the case that people don't like it. So.
Can I just yes and something Xavier just said?
Yes.
Kevin Kelly, I think in 2008, wrote an essay that had a huge impact on how I look at this stuff. And I think the title of the essay was 1,000 True Fans. And the thesis of the essay was that in an online world like the one that we live in, you only need 1,000 true fans to become successful. Now, what is a true fan? A true fan is not someone who's just going to casually listen to your podcast or casually watch your YouTube and, oh, you know, I'll watch every 2 or 3, but it's going to go in and out. A true fan is someone who's going to listen to every single episode, watch every single episode, follow you wherever you go, just loves what you're doing. And then, then if you start monetizing in some way or you want to have a Patreon, that true fan is going to follow you to the Patreon. They're going to buy your book or, watch your seminar, whatever it is, right? They absolutely love you. And so when it comes to long form or talking about whatever topic you want to talk about, as long as you're cultivating slowly but surely over time, true fans, your total fan base is less relevant because all you really need are 1,000 people. And that's an arbitrary number, of course, but it's symbolic. 1,000 true people who absolutely love what you do. And if that's 3.5 hours of German philosophy, I can't remember exactly what he said, but if that's whatever the topic is, the world has 7 billion people. You can find 1,000 of them.
That's true.
Love
Fully
that.
agree.
Good.
Fully
That's
agree.
good.
Yes, truth.
Interesting.
I want to circle back to the social media thing. So what about social media? Do you find it frustrating to use? What about it is an issue?
Okay. Also, I just remembered I wanted to ask you guys if you have any insight or foresight about this, but I don't know if you saw that like Facebook is now supports podcasts. Like you can like put your RSS like link on like I haven't explored it properly, but essentially Facebook is making moves to like integrate podcasts into like their platform in a more meaningful way. Like be able to play right on the platform and things like that. So yeah, I just
won't
like
be
am
using
seeing
it,
this.
but that's cool.
Facebook gives me anxiety.
Yeah.
I know everyone's moving off Facebook, but then they're actually moving to another like Facebook sister company. So yeah,
I'm navigating social media. I don't know.
I don't know. Like just like what I was talking about, like thumbnails. Like thumbnails is for YouTube, of course, but it's also for your other social media outlets to get them like excited about what you have to say, like Twitter and Instagram. And I find like it's cringy. Like me even doing the faces, and then I've done a thumbnail where I do like sorry guys, I've done like a shocked face, and I'm like, I can't do this. I can't.
I'm with you. I'm not gonna do all this with y'all.
I cannot do it. And I know like people, it might like my thumbnails might be boring or might not look professional or whatever, but I'm like, I can't do that. And
but Brittany, don't you just take like the footage and then like if you actually made like that expression you just made, you were just like, so like what? Just take the screenshot and be like, you had a real reaction there. Then people
but
like,
even that, I don't want to
mislead.
I don't want to mislead, like get someone in a moment where they might have been yawning and it looks like they're yelling. And it's like, no, they weren't yelling, they were yawning. You know what I mean? Like, so I don't know. Maybe I'm overthinking it too much. But yeah, and then also with social media, like you taking like bite size of your conversation, putting it up. Like, of course, you can do it the way you want. You can put what you want, but then you're like, I don't want to blame social media all the time, but like maybe you're incentivized to like pull out maybe the most polarizing part of the combo to get people. But then like that also feels not authentic to me because this was like the littlest part of what we said. But anyway, social media is
I think it's the most impassioned point. Like, I think a lot of the people that you bring on your show like make really impassioned points that are still nuanced and still like there's a way to be passionate about a nuanced perspective. You know what I mean? And like that will have resonance for a lot of people, probably people, especially in like the center of like the center left, center right, like, and I don't know. I don't know if you've heard of like this, like silent majority, but like, the social media, like basically has this kind of effect of amplifying like fringe voices on left and fringe voices on right. But actually there's like so many people in the center that have actually a more nuanced view or stance, and then they just don't necessarily make noise. They don't post in the comment sections and things like that. So I feel like you can actually still put that little soundbite of someone impassionedly speaking, putting forth the nuanced perspective, and it could perform well with like these people that don't necessarily comment and have a distaste for this other polarized material. I don't know.
Good point.
I mean, yeah, that's a great point. I think I'm with you, Brittany, because what it's giving is going back to mainstream media, because that's what people are used to. So they're used to this, watch now, turn on this, like it's just the same tone and this like grab the people and flash. Like it's the energy of, again, that diet that people are used to, and it's very mainstream media. So again, with us being so kind of opposite, and yeah, I don't know if my content is going to give you the anxiety you're used to having or make you feel some, but it's just good information. So it's like, how do you take something that's so different and try to squeeze it into, quote unquote, getting the attention in the way people are used to getting attention? And, Michael, I agree with you. It's definitely about get your 1,000 people, whoever it's going to be. And lately I've been focused more on the law of resonance over the law of attraction. And so it's going to reach who it's going to reach. You just have to resonate. And, I've had things where I did a YouTube video 9 years ago, and then some girl DM me like, I saw what you said and I need a mentor for this, or something catches on later. So it's nice that it lives.
Was that me or just kidding?
No.
But I did DM you. I was like, yo, that conversation you had was dope.
Yeah, yes. And I love it. And it doesn't mean it was the freshest conversation. Sometimes these things are years old. So the way they live and how your content makes its way to people kind of has its own thing, as if the way we function in real life. Like you might bump into somebody at a party and have a great conversation. You might say yes to this event and end up meeting a whole group that da-da-da-da. And I think our media moves that way. So I'm trying to look at it more like that, because for me, keeping up with these silly thumbnails and trying to give you sound bites and something so you can be joined into my conversation, like I'm kind of with you, Jason, like those might be the shallow people. It might be the people who's just like, oh my God, they're drama. Oh, that's not really drama. They're like actually preaching on here. Never mind. Like, I don't need, it's okay. I'm hoping to reach people to give them a higher level of thought if possible. But if that's not what they're ready for, that's okay. So I'm trying to find my balance too, but just the typical way and how things look, I'm struggling. It's not my vibe.
True.
Yeah, I would
Xavier, Michael, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, I was just going to say really quickly. For me, it comes down to two things: time is valuable, and don't do what you hate, especially if you're not getting paid for it. Right? I come from the world. I wasn't on camera, but I come from the same world that Jaimi comes from, and so. Like, I'll give an example. Like, I have a really adorable dog. He's a miniature poodle mix. His name is Charlie. He's a celebrity wherever he goes. He's the most friendly, extroverted little boy. He is just the best, right? And he's quite the looker. And so people will tell me,
become your podcast ambassador.
Charlie is adorable.
I'm working on it. But people will tell me, like on the street, does he have an Instagram? And I'm like, no. And they're like, you should get him an Instagram. And I'm at the point now where I will tell them exactly what I'm about to tell you now. I say, I will not get him an Instagram, because if I get him an Instagram, I will want to make it one of the most popular Instagrams in the world. There's just something in me that will be so perfectionist. I'll find myself, if I had an Instagram for Charlie, I'll take 50 photos of him posing. I'll change the lighting. I'll make it the most adorable thing. One, because I know that that's what you need to do to get ahead on Instagram. And two, I am super obsessive about making something perfect, right? And so for me, one of the reasons that I don't do a ton of social media is I am stopping myself from obsessing, because I know that I will lose hours and hours and hours of time. Like, I have a personal website for my freelance work, and I'm not joking. This is not an exaggeration for comedy. I spent probably about 12 hours figuring out the fonts. Like, that's not a joke. I was like, well, how does this font look?
And this is the podcast.
Yeah. And so all of this is to say, it's like part of how I constrict myself in terms of how I advertise and how I present is self-care. And then part of it is I don't want to do what I hate. Because if I'm doing this for fun, if I'm doing this for my own personal satisfaction and value, I don't want to hate it. Because if I hate it, I'll stop. And I frankly don't want to stop.
Okay, but Michael, would
Amen.
you not actually love like having the Instagram account of your dog and then just putting that little speech bubble, you know, and then like he's like asking like critical questions about like postmodernism and stuff like that. And then like then he's like, you know, people, then you just
That'd
link
be
to your
popular.
podcast
Oh yeah,
episodes,
bring him
like,
into the podcast Instagram and be like,
yeah, you
what's
just,
wrong
he
with
doesn't have a
political
will, you
talking
can
today?
co-opt it.
That'd be cute.
I've got a bone to pick with society.
That's really good though.
Ba-bum.
I like.
It's funny though too, because I can be a perfectionist and I had to let that go. There is one of the highest viewed videos on my page. Yes, I was talking about a celebrity, but I was like, there was no lighting. I was cooking food. I had just eaten. I didn't even think anybody was going to look at it. It was terrible. I'm walking around my house on the phone like, why don't they just, I'm not even being like nothing. There's no intro. I'm not even, and I'm like, what? This has more views than anything I tried to put together. I can't. It's like, it doesn't have to be that for social media. And I kind of love that.
That's funny. It's exactly like my first video went viral. Was probably like my second video that I did. And I was just in my room, like the worst lighting, it was just literally, I saw a video. I'm like, I'm going to just talk about this. Did it. And then like maybe a few weeks later, it got like 500,000 views. But the thing about that though, is the men I was discussing and what I was talking about, then all the people that saw that video subscribed and then want that type of content. And I'm like, I'm way more than that. And I'm more interested in way more than that. So I did find myself talking about one of those men in other, videos, which I wanted to do. But then I was like, no, what am I doing? I'm only talking about him. And those videos have 400,000 views. But I stopped. I'm like, I'm not doing this. I'm not going to talk about this person really anymore. And I'm going to start talking about what I want. I'm going to talk about music. I'm going to talk about Lizzo if I want. Like, I know people want me to just talk about race issues and stuff, but I also like music and TV and this. So I'm going to talk about what I want. And some of those videos don't do as well. A lot of them don't do as well. But I feel better about those videos. Like, I feel like this is more me. This is more authentic. And I want to ask about burnout, but I think Xavier was about to say something.
No.
You weren't?
No.
Okay. So I want to ask about burnout because also I think maybe all of us have this gene of being a perfectionist. And I think for me, that was a big reason why I experienced burnout like quickly. How do you all manage burnout? Have you experienced it? Are you experiencing it? Like, how has that been?
I love that we're having this conversation because I have a new venture that I'm doing. And it's called Loving Life Deep. And it's all for the people who are used to overthinking, burnout, and performing for acceptance. Because I know all about that. And I really feel like I've come to the other side of it simply because I'm going to do me first. When I started King Speak, I was doing it every week. I was doing King Speak on Tuesdays and then Queen's Glean on Thursdays. And it's overwhelming. Even when I was at AfterBuzz TV, I had 2 or 3 shows a week. Yes, I'm just sitting there for an hour, but getting to the studio, getting mic'd up, being prepared, the energy of talking, discussing, it is far more than that hour conversation. And it was getting beyond exhausting, but I kept showing up because I'm like, I have to stay consistent and do blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, that's so self-imposed. This is my podcast. Isn't that the point? So I took King Speak and Queen's Glean from weekly to every other week. And when every other week got hectic because there were some other jobs that came into play, I did it once a month. Nobody complained. It's not that serious. I learned to kind of, okay, well, we can do clips from this one that we did. Like, let people eat off this 1.5, 2 hour episode. There's a bunch of bits and pieces in here. But just this, I think I'm saying all that to say, my experience of burnout was self-imposed. Nobody was putting that on. I was putting that on. And for what? What standard? Where am I getting this? That you have to work so hard and do all this? It's not what I got into this for. I got into this because it's easy, because it's my personality and my flow to converse and communicate with people. This is not about stressing out about adhering to some schedule that is making me tired. So it's really just listening and honoring myself.
Mhm.
And it letting it be about nothing but that. Nobody is on the other side of anywhere. There's no they talking
It's
about
true.
anything I need to be doing. Nobody's thinking about me and my schedule.
It's so true.
So, like,
It's so
I'll let
true.
it go.
Anyone want to go before me? I'll go last. I have stuff to say.
I don't know. I haven't felt this, to be honest. I don't know.
You're a wizard, Xavier. I do
I
not know how
mean,
you
I
do
know
that.
all the
Must be
things that
nice.
you
Look at
do,
this.
though. All the
How
things you do, all the
Yeah.
things you told me you do, and then I'm like, you have
Yeah,
great
You're like,
know-
I read
scheduling.
6 books this week, recorded 4 podcasts.
Like,
I
for
have
real,
my
like, for
clinical
real.
You got a
practice.
documentary
Yeah, I
in
mean,
the
aren't you,
works.
aren't
I
you a
found a hole
psychiatrist?
in the time
I
continuum,
know.
and I'm Dr. Strange.
Exactly.
Aren't you a psychiatrist? You can also just prescribe yourself something that just,
I
you
know.
know,
Or
No,
me.
no, not
Prescribe
the
me
the load
psychiatrist.
a little bit.
something.
No,
lessens the
but
load.
I'll just say I mean, the stuff's a labor of love. I mean, I don't know if I find that I do it really because I want to. I don't. I don't know. I mean, I always when I tell myself, "Oh, I'll slow down a little bit," there's like 15 other people I want to talk to for various reasons. I'm like, oh well, why not? And I'll ask, and they say yes, and then we do it, and then it's getting posted. I mean, I don't know. I don't really, and to be fair, I mean, I spend an extreme amount of preparation for podcasts, so many hours, but I don't really do a whole lot outside of work and family. I'm not a huge TV person. I'm not watching every I mean, I don't know. I mean, some people will ask me, they'll say, well, what do you do after work? And I say, well, I do a lot of reading, a couple hours of reading a day. So I don't know. It's I haven't really experienced it yet. I have felt though, anytime I feel like I should slow down, I've had podcasts where I'll just do one a week, and that will be. It feels strange, but I don't know. At some point, I probably won't do the podcast. I don't know whenever that is, but for now, I don't know. I haven't felt it yet. I don't know. It's weird.
Do you think it's because, and I just was thinking this, I'm like, perhaps it could be because there's a difference between having an audio podcast and a YouTube channel.
Oh yeah.
I don't know how, like on your podcast platform, can people comment and you see them like instantly, or is that like you don't even get comments, whether it's Twitter or something?
I just do audio because video is a whole other animal. It's so many components, and I definitely, if I was doing video, I wouldn't be able to probably do it as much as I want to, and it's just a lot of things, and then it's already a difficult thing to control other people's audio. People don't have all of the stuff, and I don't have the funds to send everyone a mic and everything, so video would just be, I couldn't be able to control for that in terms of sound, and then lighting, and then the quality, and then I would get bogged down in more of the technical stuff than the actual content and the conversation. So that's why I don't do video. So I think that's probably a bit of it, but I don't know. I mean, maybe it's just that kind of residual from grad school. Grad school was like, just going 100 miles on a train. And so I kind of have some leftover energy from that. I don't know. But and it's something I actually enjoy doing.
I feel you on the grad school thing, because I started my podcast at grad school. So then I did this. I don't know if it's not the workload that's a burnout. I think it might be all of the extra additional factors, whether it is visual. Because when I had my audio podcast, I didn't have burnout. Like maybe because I was probably burning out on grad school, I didn't have energy to burn out probably, but I didn't experience it. It was more like an outlet of just like my vice of talking to people. But with YouTube, and it's not all the time, but I've experienced burnout mainly when I started to get a lot more followers. Like when I had 100 followers, it was like cool, but now I have like 24,000, and there is a weird stress on that, even if I get good comments or bad. Like good comments, like holding you up to this standard, and you just being like, okay, the next video has to be better, and the next video has to be better. I have to be more sharp. I have to be this, and then of course the comments that aren't great to hear. But yeah, I don't know really what it is. I think I do agree with Jaimi though. Like when I realized like it's me though, like I don't have a boss making me do this. And I decided that if my views go down but I feel better throughout the week, then it's fine. Like, and that is one reason why, and I know Xavier knows this and Michael knows this, and I think Jason maybe, but when I took a job at IU to be a writing instructor, I was like, well, how am I going to do this in YouTube? And I'm like, why am I even caring about inserting how I'm going to do YouTube into this opportunity? I was like, this opportunity deserves all my attention. And if YouTube suffers, it does. And it did. But I was like, I'm okay with that. So I think being less of a perfectionist can help with not burning out so quick at all. So
one affirmation, Britt, I mean, I think in terms of like that 1,000, true fans, like I think you've actually cultivated a lot of true fans, that like don't really care whether the content takes a dip for a while and whatever. Like maybe we won't watch all the videos, maybe we're not interested in all the topics that you put there, but it's like fine, we're not going to unsubscribe because like a particular video or thumbnail didn't necessarily look good. It's like it'd be like, I know that Brittany, the way Brittany thinks, like the way she holds conversations, like I'm just gonna keep waiting and see like what other content she puts through, and like when something catches my attention and whets my curiosity, then I'm gonna like click, and I'm definitely gonna be like keen to check it out. So I think that's might give you some
done and done, right?
There's definitely ride or dies for sure. There's people that are really supportive of me, whether they're like, if you need, girl, take the time. Like they'd be saying this, I'll do that. But anyone else?
That's real when it comes to relationship though. Like if you're not around people who love you enough that allow you to take a break when you need a break, like do I really need you around me? Because exactly. I'm not here just to
like you better have a video up every Thursday. I'm like,
yeah.
Britt, I had a question kind of related to the burnout, which is you're talking about like the comment sections and stuff. I mean, I think some of the guys on this panel also get into a little bit of political material, but when you sort of stir up people's opinions and trigger them and various things. I mean, like South Africa it is very sensitive, like, when it comes to race relations and stuff. And like, even if I'm taking a very sensitive approach, like it can get I can get people worked up, and that just like always weighs on me. I'm like, I don't want to be like having a negative impact on people and getting people angry and whatever. Like, and so have you had a relationship with that in terms of burnout and just getting a little despondent around polarization and stuff?
Is that to me?
I think.
Yeah. Well, actually, it's all to everyone, but I'm
I was just gonna say, you can only control yourself, man. I mean, you can do your very best to try as hard as you can to be responsible, to have accuracy in what you're meaning, to try and understand what the other person is saying. And if you're doing that and you feel confident about that, that's all you can do. The conversations that I have done that have been with some, controversial topics or guests, that's where I've landed on that. Did I do everything I possibly could? And did I try to, elucidate from this guest, the most accurate things about their position, agree or disagree?
But you let the guest take all of the heat, essentially. I mean, like you'll just be asking questions, and you're just this like sort of neutral.
But it's sort of. I mean, it doesn't. You know how it goes. I mean, it doesn't. People will hit you for a bunch of things. They'll hit you if you did it. Why didn't you ask this question? Well, why didn't you let them say this? Well, why didn't you stop them there? Why didn't you correct here? Right. So it's not entirely just, we'll let the person just kind of sink themselves. I mean, there is a little bit of what you say or don't say. And, if you're to me, I think if you're tackling really tough subjects, you either don't do it or you try to have very thoughtful, not overly scripted, but just very thoughtful and responsible ways of saying like, hey, look, I recognize this is really sensitive. I recognize for some people this may be really tough, and acknowledge that. And then you work as hard as you can, both on whatever your response is, and then how you're managing the conversation at X, Y, and Z. And if you can do that and feel good with it, people are going to say and do whatever they want anyways. But as long as you can do it as much on your part in a way that's, abiding by whatever your ethics or your moral landscape is, then I think that's all you can really do. So
Agreed.
I would also say that the only way out is through, as cliched as that sounds. Like a lot of our societal problems, of various magnitudes of pain, come from silence, right? Whether the silence was imposed upon various groups, whether it comes to religion, race, gender, etc. Like, hey, this is how we talk about this subject, and if you try to talk about it any other way, we're silencing you, right? Like, we talk a lot about deplatforming today, but deplatforming was way worse a few decades ago. We deplatformed entire ethnic groups of people, entire races of people, entire sexes, right? Like, South Africa deplatformed, like 80% of the country. I don't even know the percentage, but so silence is the root of so much tension, right? Because people aren't able to express their true desires, their true feelings. They aren't able to live their lives as full people. But the other side of that coin is when people begin to finally, because of societal changes or new media like the internet, et cetera, begin to break that silence and talk about subjects in ways that aren't really new. They've always been around. The only thing that's new is that now people get to talk about them. There are so many people who have become so accustomed to the silence that they feel intensely uncomfortable around noise. And so when people react to having on certain guests, right? And of course, there are truly horrendous, controversial people out there, and that's a whole different topic. But in the just talking about it, whether it's, again, race, gender, politics, religion, the hot button things you don't talk about around the Thanksgiving table, there are some people who just don't want you to talk about it at all because the silence has become a comfort. But again, the only way out is through. We have to go through a period of time where we're having these conversations in a messy way, where maybe we're even getting our feelings hurt. We're saying things that maybe we wish we hadn't said, or someone says something to us that offends us. But we're only having to mud through all of that because we haven't been able to talk about it for most of our history because of an imposed silence. And so for my 2 cents, like, again, the only way out of this problem, the only way to get to a healthier future in which we can all express ourselves equally and all feel heard is to get through this messy part where we have to break the silence and talk openly. And then hopefully we get to the other side.
Exactly.
Agreed.
And also, don't read the comments. But you know what? I don't wholly believe in that. I read the comments. I don't read them all though. And with engaging, like if like my video or someone that brings on triggers someone or a panel discussion does, yeah, I mean, it definitely is in the comment section. And if it's pointed at me though, I can kind of tell someone's intention a bit, but it's very hard to have an authentic conversation with someone with a comment within the comment section. Because, and based on how they frame the question or their grievance, then I might engage or not. A couple of times there's been times where I've been able to clarify my point and that person really heard me. But I think maybe it was less of them hearing me and them not thinking I was going to respond. I noticed like when I respond to someone, they're like, oh, she responded. Oh, I love like the video. Actually, exactly. And maybe that's what they wanted, was to be seen. I'm like, well, you know what? There you go. But
you don't find like it has a bearing on like burnout in a way. I mean, even to whatever extent.
Oh yeah, the comment section does, and that's why I don't put too much energy into it unless I feel like there's someone really asking a question that they want answered, and I really feel like we can have a conversation. Yeah, I will do that. But I don't go too deep into the comments. And also, if I feel a discussion or an interview might be really, 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 really polarizing for the audience, I will do a disclaimer before the video. Just so it's like, all right, I already know the comments are about to be wild and I don't have time to go in and explain. So I'm going to just talk about how every individual has a right to say what they want to say on this platform and talk about that a little bit, give them like 2 minutes of explaining what happened. And that actually happened with my last CRT debate, because I knew people were going to go after a couple of people, and I don't want anyone to go after any panelists I bring on, period. Even if I don't agree with that person, if I bring on my platform, to me, I do feel like I have a responsibility in a sense to kind of protect you as much as I can from like actual hate. I mean, there's people that were giving a couple people like crazy hate. And also I don't let those live though. Like you can give critique, but when you're calling someone a racial epithet, like that's not going to be on my page, period. And I probably actually will block you if you're someone that keeps doing that.
You can delete those comments too.
And I delete So that's what I do. So that actually helps with burnout, with being like, okay, I'm gonna disclaimer this, and then the comments will be what they are. Like I can't control.
Disclaimer is great.
Yeah, I can't control what people say, what my panelists say, or what people say. When you put something on the public, it's for the public. So that's kind of what it is. But okay, this conversation is great. And like every other panel discussion, I have like 50 questions and like 3 gets answered because the conversation like goes so good. But I do want to ask this. I have a couple more I want to ask. How do you guys, and I think you guys kind of talked about this, but how do you stay true to yourself and not let popularity or views dictate the content you create? And is there ever a time where you are about to upload a conversation or maybe a critical take of yours and you think, I'm not going to post this? Because that's happened to me a lot. But I'm just curious if that happens to anyone else.
I have a small group of people that I keep around me that I will try to have them. Small group of people that don't agree with me, or they disagree with me, or maybe they agree with me on some things but not on other things. And I have kind of a rotation, and so I'll say, can you, if I feel nervous about something, I'll ask, hey, can you listen to this? Or what do you think about this? What am I missing? What am I not getting?
Before you release it.
Yeah, sometimes. Sometimes it's not even about. Sometimes it's just explaining. Like maybe they won't listen to the audio, but I'll say like, this is what happened or whatever, and here's my concern. Am I missing something? Am I not seeing this? I mean, there's so much I don't know. So I'm just like, yeah, this kind of, this conversation felt weird and I don't know why, and okay. Am I in my head, or, what are you seeing? You have nothing with this. And I've, call friends or, people, family, or, people close to me, and I'll ask them for advice. And sometimes it's just like, no, you're fine, or you're overthinking this. Or sometimes it's like, no, you could maybe clean this up here. Maybe some of that would actually be the best podcast material. Like literally just you putting your doubts out like to the world and letting what other people... I have, like everyone else, I get nervous before every conversation, and I have doubts after every conversation. So that's just kind of how it goes.
Same here.
That's good. I think I have a lot less. Oh, go ahead, Jason.
No, I was actually something Brit had said earlier, just about her wanting to like represent the breadth of her character, interests, etc., like on her channel, because it felt like more true to herself. I wanted to like go a little bit in that direction, but please complete your thought before. Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah, I'll be quick. I was just gonna say, I think that my content is probably less controversial than you guys, but for me, I learned to trust myself. And that has been a major thing. And it's a little thing. For example, one of your questions, Bert, that you said ahead of time was like, share something that you learned, blah, blah, blah. And in my head, I had an idea like, oh, I'm going to share something that this doctor shared on, you know, the podcast of this and that, because it was so interesting to me. But as I sat with myself this morning and got ready, blah, 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 I clicked on something and I'm like, wow. And when I heard, you know, I replayed The Mindful Man, which was one of my podcast topics. What I had wrote down to share, we touched on so many places in this random conversation in 2 hours. So these are the little things that build my trust. It's like, I'm going with my flow. I can hear myself. I can hear my intuition. I'm very in tune and in tap with my flow. So that kind of, it's that trust. I anchor myself in that. So if I feel posted, I posted. If I feel pause. Because then sometimes that pause turns into, oh, do it in the morning. And then that gets whatever. I just feel this inner dance with myself that allows me to fully trust. And you know, even though I mentioned it can be frustrating not getting views and people not wanting to eat on certain content, I don't care. If you look at my channel, I've been posting since 2009. And I don't have as many.
You've been here. You've been doing this.
You know, and I'm going to keep doing it because it's me and I have something to, you know, so it could be anything. I could get a TV show next week and now all of a sudden everybody's all up in my business. You're going to have a lot for quite some time to enjoy and to indulge on. It's my, you know, so all these things. So when it comes to staying true to myself, I trust myself. Like, we are as unique as a fingerprint. I'm somebody who will die for freedom. And why freedom? It's like you were put here as an expression of God to be your full self. Wherever I'm at, I'm giving you all that space to be that, because there's something special. There's something unique about the way you think, the way you work, when you want to post, what you want to say, And I feel like it's important that we give people space to own that. If not, we're missing out. We're missing out on the treat of Brittany, Jason, Xavier, Michael, if we're shutting them down or making you feel a certain way, or if you feel nervous about not posting because you're not getting that. I would hate that. Why would we want to miss out on all of that? So it's all about, for me, anchoring and trusting in self. And it's mind-blowing how intuitive this stuff really is for me.
It really is.
Yeah.
The title of my show serves like two purposes, really. It's thematic, you know, where we go next with nuclear technology, where we go next with political conflict resolution, etc. But it also is a message to anyone listening that I'm going to go wherever I want, man. So I'm going to talk about whatever I feel passionate about on a week-to-week basis. And it's selfish for sure, but it's the only thing that's going to keep me producing the podcast, because I am not this is not me being sarcastic. I truly admire people who can have a show about one thing and do an episode every week on that one thing, whatever it might be, over and over and over again. Because for me, that would just be like eating the same food every single day until I die. And that's great for some people. I mean, I listen to shows. I love podcasts that are about the same topic or a version of the same topic every week. That's awesome. I'm just not built that way. So the way that I keep myself from getting burnt out is I make a deal with myself and the audience that, you know what, you might not like every episode, similar to what you were saying, Brittany, about how if you want to publish a podcast about XYZ, you're going to do that, and it might not get as many views. But if it keeps the podcast going, if it keeps you from burning out, I think that's the right thing to do.
Exactly. Yes. I want to go last. So who hasn't said anything?
I guess just for me, I have said something. I mean, I flagged it. I'm last. That's a lot of pressure. But there is this strange like tension between like, if you do just bring your whole self to a channel, then like, yeah, somehow people don't necessarily know what to expect, and like, they maybe don't like one specific thing. Like Brittany, for instance, if you were like bringing a bunch of the Christianity thing like to your channel or whatever, like I don't know at which point
I do talk about God. I have my sermons.
You do.
No, I sprinkle God in there because
you sprinkle. I'm cool with the sprinkling. I'm cool with the sprinkling.
I would never start preaching because I go by what got me. Like, I'm not trying to witness necessarily to get people into going to church or whatever. Like, mostly people think I'm Christian based on my content. Like, I don't even have to say I'm Christian a lot of the time. Like, some people just think I am. Though someone thought I was atheist because they said I'm very open. So, which I'm like, okay, that's cool. I mean, whatever. But I don't know. Like, with originality, and I think Jason, you're kind of getting to this. Like, I'm not necessarily trying to put my whole self, like everything, but I'm just not wanting to be pigeonholed into something because people like me saying these things or talking about these topics. Like, that's what I mean. Like, I'm like, you know what? I know I started this channel kind of talking about mostly social race issues within America, and I will continue to talk about that, but also, dang, like, this music album just came out, Kendrick just came out, and I want to review it, and this movie came out, I want to review it. But then sometimes I felt like, oh, I can't do that because that's not this channel. But I'm like, but that's who I am. Like, I love that. Like, I write about that. A lot of my content that I write about is on pop culture a lot and on music. And fashion too. So it's not that I want to do an overhaul, but I do want to do more things that express my interests.
Yeah. So. I think one thing that resolves just in the tech is literally like being able to just create series so that like you find the topics or the, just all segmented, so now if I don't necessarily care for your Christian material, I can like find some of your race relation stuff just on the next column over on the next row down.
Okay, all right, Reverend. Like, I don't want to see that.
I got it there all the time.
Whereas podcasts, they don't allow you to like create series within like podcasts.
Oh, I have like different playlists, but like, I mean, if with that too, like, I don't know if I want a playlist about music. Then I feel like, well, I have to talk about a lot of music stuff. Maybe I don't. Maybe this just one album that came out that I kind of want to talk about, and maybe months later I'll talk about something else. But I don't want to feel like, okay, now next week I got to make sure I keep it up and making like. I just don't want. I want as less pressure. I realize, like, because like Michael said, I kind of started to teeter on hating YouTube. I really kind of was, because I was like, this isn't that fun anymore. Like, it's not fun, and it should be fun. Of course, there's stress here as well, but it should ultimately be fun, I feel. So then why start it? But anyway, anyone else have something on this? Because I have 2 questions. It'll be quick, I promise. But you guys, I know you guys want to answer these. Okay, I don't know which one. I'm gonna start with this one. I don't know why I'm starting with this because I don't even have an answer. But if you could interview 2 people dead or alive, who would they be? Why? You can either say why you would choose them or what you would ask them. You can go either route. Yeah. If we need a pause of a minute, it's fine. I can edit this out because I'm so. I have a whole list and I don't even know who. But I'll go first. I'll be a sport. I'll go first. I have like 8 people, but I'll just choose 2. So first, I would, and this might be cliche, but I would have Dr. King on, Martin Luther King, because, and I wouldn't really ask him anything about the past. I would ask him about the present. I find it very interesting that he's utilized a lot on both political aisles to suit their narrative. And I would want to ask him, and not in a divisive way, but him coming back, seeing like how his content, his speeches have been spread, shared, and people doing like writings, books on it and everything. I would want him to like explain to us who's more accurate, or are we all off about his intentions about America and what he meant with I have a dream, or I've been to the mountaintop, or things of that nature. I would want to ask him those questions about the present and how does he feel about how he's represented now. All right, and are we on to something or are we off on the direction he thought we would be on? So that's one person. And the next person, oh, this is hard.
Do they have to be famous?
They don't have to be famous. I just go that route. They don't have to be famous. I'll just say, I have to say, I probably would interview Harriet Tubman, but I don't know what I'd ask. I think I would be too intimidated. I don't even know what I asked. But this might be random, but I would interview Whitney Houston because she had like I loved her, and I
I
still listen to her
love
music.
her.
Yes, and I remember. I don't think when I watched The Preacher's Wife, that was like the first time I discovered her, but I discovered her when I was really young. And she reminded me of my mother and like, you know, the church, and she, you know, she was a Christian in faith and everything. And I just want to know at the last moments of her life what she needed. Like what were we not seeing? How was she not being heard? Like just what did you need from whoever? That's what I would ask, because we all know her background and her issues with addiction, and then she got sober, and when she got sober she was sharp. I was like, oh, she's back. And then that's when she left, and I was like, what happened? Like what was going on during that period? So I would want to just ask her that, and that would be an intense question to ask when she comes back, like what happened. She'd be like, girl, let me sing. But yeah, that's what I would ask. I would ask Whitney Houston that question and Dr. Martin Luther King. So that's mine.
I love both of those so much. I think I would be curious, as you were talking, I was thinking like, gosh, I would love to interview maybe like a great grandmother of mine, because I would want, where do you live? Where are you from? How do you feel? What are your deepest issues? Like, I want to know how much of that is in me. What do you think of me? Like, I'm so curious of like bloodline and lineage and the depth of, because, you know, they say we carry so much in our DNA and this and that. So it's like, maybe we have similarities. Why am I so like tenacious on certain things? Why do I go through these things? Like, what do you go through? Like, what did you see? Did you ever think about your children's children? Like, I got bad questions. I'm just like, who are you? Like, who am I? Like in this, you know? So that would definitely, that would definitely be one. And then the second one that just popped up in my mind instantly, and I don't even know why, was Tupac, because he was smart. He was colorful and nuanced and gangster and loud and opinionated. And I'm a Gemini, and I love me a good Gemini man. You can say what you want about the Kanyes and the da-da-da-da. I'm a very understanding. I want to hear it. I want to hear the stuffs. Okay. You know what I'm saying? And I want to hear it call, like, what's up? You know, so I would be curious to the way he kind of shut stuff down, especially when it comes to our African-American culture and the way he spoke about things and whatever. Like, I need you to read what's going on, and like, let's get back the 90s, like early hip, like, what's up? What do you think? What do you feel? What do you see? Chin check these fools is really what I'm saying, but in a like, educated way. Like, what are we doing? This ain't, you know.
Talk to these young rappers, please. Okay. I don't even know who they are.
I don't know either. I can't. I'm still, you know, stuck on a little old school hip hop, but I feel like his voice, he could speak, because a lot of men, not all men, and maybe it's younger men, are very influenced by these rappers and this, that, and the other. So y'all need to hear it from somebody with some sense, in my opinion.
Amen. Amen. And I'm going to ask Michael to go, because he has to go like in a couple of minutes. So
okay,
Michael, if you're there.
I am here.
Okay.
That was the radio voice.
I know. I was like,
I can really turn it on. Hey, all you crazy dudes and ladies out there. It's Saturday night. It's time for some blues.
Wow. Voiceover, hire him.
I know. And I will be taking that clip.
You've been listening to American Shade.
I'm really taking that.
Yeah, I mean,
that's the clip for Instagram.
Yeah.
I'm glad that was entertaining to you, because I don't think I have two people. I really liked your answer, Jaimi, about talking to like a great grandmother or grandfather. Although I would love to be a fly on the wall for that, because I imagine like the conversation starting with you like asking her a bunch of questions, and then like her first response is like, "What's a YouTube?" You know, like she's just like totally disoriented.
Why am I on Zoom?
Or you just don't speak the same language. How about you're like, damn it, I didn't take that into account.
I have no idea what you're saying. No, but I think that's a really cool idea. I mean, the people I want to talk to change on a day-to-day basis. I'm kind of my mind's all over the place. Like I had dream guests. I had dream guests when I started the podcast, and then I spoke to most of them. You know, like the people I wanted to talk with were people who I felt were having difficult conversations in really interesting ways. Like Aisha Akambi was like a dream guest of mine. I actually still to this day, I feel like I played a trick on her or something. I don't know why she can't. This is not me being like false modest. I don't know why she said yes to me, but that was such a fantastic conversation. You know, John Wood Jr. also was a huge one for me. Brittany, I mean, after I read your essay, I was so blown away by it, and it was such an honor to talk with you. And I'm not just saying that to build up your ego because you had me on the panel. It is true. So
I paid him for that.
the bribe was received. But no, overall, I mean, in terms of like dream guests, I mean, I'll steal from you, Jaimi. I mean, I don't think about him as a podcast guest, but I guess if I can resurrect someone from the dead, I would want to speak with my grandfather who passed away when I was 5.5. You know, like I have so many
touching.
pleasant memories of him, you know, like that period between like 3 and 5.5 when I was forming memories. And, but obviously they're all from the point of view of like a 4 or 5-year-old, right? Like their trips to the toy store, their long drives around Long Island in his convertible, his big voice, his wonderful jokes, like his amazing laugh that was contagious. Like I remember all of that, but all the other stories I hear about him are secondhand from adults who knew him as adults. And so it would be great to speak to the man who made such a big impression on me when I was 5, as an adult. You know, he passed away pretty early. He was 59 from a heart attack. And it would just be great to speak with him, you know, and if that means the deal with the devil here is I got to have him as a guest on my podcast and people aren't going to know who the hell Jonathan McGarrion is, then, you know, their loss. But it would be great to speak with him. But beyond that, I think that the list is always changing.
Awesome. Well, thank you. I mean, I would tune in for that for sure.
Yeah, right. There's something
It's-
so sentimental about that. Like it makes me want to tear up a little bit. I don't know why. It's
That's
a lot.
awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
But I do want to say I apologize for having to duck out a little bit earlier. I have to drive across town. But I do want to say, Brittany, thank you so much for putting this panel together. It was a real pleasure. I was definitely a little nervous at first because I'm more comfortable as a host than a guest. But I think you did a really fantastic job moderating it, and it's been such a pleasure to get to know the rest of you, Jason, Jaimi, Xavier. Of course, you and I have known each other before this, but I really enjoyed it, and you guys are all really fascinating, and I totally understand why you have shows because, you're great. So thanks for having me be a part of it.
Michael, too nice. Thank you so much, and thank
was-
you for coming on. I'm
my
so glad
pleasure.
you did this.
Nice
And his-
meeting you.
His podcast link will be in the description box below. So yeah, everyone check him out. He's awesome.
Remember to like and subscribe.
I mean, if you don't subscribe, I don't know why. Like,
Smash that subscribe.
Yeah.
Smash that like button. All right,
So
guys. I'll see you
good.
later, and have
Thank
a great
you.
rest of your conversation. Okay.
Thank you, Michael. Bye. Thank you. Okay, Xavier and Jason.
Xavier, you want to go first or?
Go ahead.
Okay.
You go ahead.
I think my 2 would be Steve Biko and Eminem.
I don't know who Steve Biko is.
I know. What the name sounds familiar.
I'm like,
but
should I know?
Um,
I don't know.
I feel like we
Steve
should
Bi-
know.
Steve Biko basically invented or is the brain father of like the Black consciousness movement in South Africa. It's a very like race conscious sort of philosophy or set of philosophies. I mean, his book "I Write What I Like" was like very thought provoking for me several years ago. That was probably one of my first like materials that I read in terms of race relations. But I just think it would be interesting getting his perspectives on like how things are unfolding now. Because I mean, he was also writing at a time where there was just such incredible injustice, just in the way of like policy. Besides the inertia of like bad policy, just like literally horrible horribly unjust policy. So, I mean, his writings being like sort of as strongly opinionated and and as race conscious as they were, like, would they be so appropriate nowadays when like we're sort of have like the law sees and treats us equally, at least on paper? Like, yeah, it would just be interesting to see how he, what he thinks about how things have played out and what the way forward would be. He was murdered earlier. He would probably be like on nearing the end of his life today by his, but anyways, and then Eminem, I think that he sort of broke the mold in a way, in terms of like showing that it's not necessarily about your skin color or your race, that he's like still able to like play off that to an extent, but still make it about something, let's say more about class or about culture, to still like find belonging and still like add value in a certain space. I think that that's like, I don't know how many other people I can like point to in that way that like authentically were like accepted within a very like specific subculture that had a very like that ran quite strongly along race lines. So yeah, I think that he's a really fascinating case study, and I should probably just go on YouTube and see like what interviews are out on him. But I've been thinking
There's a
about
lot,
him
actually.
lately. Yeah, I'm gonna be geeking out on that for a while in the next day or two, because I was thinking about him, like, this dude, what the hell?
Can you freestyle? Can you drop
I can freestyle a little bit. I can freestyle a little bit. You'd have to put on.
I know, right?
Go.
Go.
Hey.
You're like, let's go.
But you have to hold
can't
down
do no.
a good head.
Okay, Jamie's really holding the beat.
I'm also a little out of practice, so.
I love people like, I'm out of practice. They're like, which means I'm not doing it. So stop.
So I'll give you a good beatbox. I'm up for some rap.
Drop the beat.
Yeah.
DJ Brit.
All right, Xavier, you're up.
I would say I'm gonna pick 3, so don't be upset at me.
Go off.
Go ahead. You always break the rules.
Friedrich Nietzsche. He's so influential on Western thought and somewhat of Eastern thought. Kind of the Western philosophical canon is summed up with him. He's one of the best thinkers, I think. And his life was cut short at the end when he was making his magnum opus on the revaluation of all values. And I really wanted to know what his ideas were about that. And I think I was thinking about people that would be good conversationalists. So I think he would be a pretty good conversationalist, I think. And Sigmund Freud, of course, super misunderstood by many people in the modern era, unfortunately. I also think he was brilliant, and I would be curious. He was somebody that was very much not opposed to changing his theory and adjusting it, and he did this towards the end of his life with the death instinct. And I would be curious to see what his opinions would be on kind of contemporary psychodynamic theory and therapy, and what adjustments. I would love to see what he would think about Heinz Kohut's reinterpretation of his narcissistic theory, etc. So I mean, he was just a powerhouse, and I would definitely want to talk to him, and I think he also would be a good conversationalist. And then Kanye West. I think he's a genius.
What would you ask? I did a piece on him daily.
I know you did. I think he's a genius.
Yeah,
I don't know. I would ask him a bunch of things. I would stick with it. I just want to know. I want to know like how his mind is an encyclopedia of like sound and music, and how he's able to put all of it together, and that process. and then also his very future oriented way of looking at music and fashion, how is he able to break out of the box that so many other artists, including rappers and people that do hip hop, can't, and he maintains that for 20 years, and he's still doing that. And then I would definitely ask him about mental health. I mean, I have a pretty good sense just from observation of kind of where he is on that, and I kind of get it, but I think he's a genius. I think he's a musical genius. I have always liked him. I will continue to like him for his incredible talent. So I would love to have a conversation with him.
Is he a political genius?
Donda was good, not gonna lie.
I don't really care about his politics. I don't care about his personal life. I don't care about his. I don't in so much insofar as, like, obviously those things are important to a person and stuff. But I mean, he can have whatever ideas or thoughts he wants in terms of his art, and in terms of his music, and in terms of his talent. He's unparalleled. So I would definitely, and I think he'd also be a good conversationalist. So
I would love to see a long form 4-hour conversation with you and Kanye. I'm not even kidding.
I would do it in a heartbeat. In a heartbeat. I think I can't think of anybody musically in that scene or in other scenes that are kind of that way. I don't think they're. I mean, to me, he's top, and so I think he's great.
I say that's true. Okay, I promise last question, and let's make this very short. What have you learned about yourself since having your podcast or channel? I'll go first. One sentence. I just realized having this podcast or having this YouTube channel, how curious I really, really am, and how much I really enjoy talking with people. Like, I knew that when I did my journalism master's, but really doing it like on my own terms, I realized I am so curious about the why, and that it's never really like the topic isn't even the topic. Usually it's always layers to it. And I enjoy the process of getting down to the bottom of stuff. So I'm very curious. I realize how curious I am. And I just love talking to people and seeing why they think the way they think. That's it.
I love that. I think I'm with you on that. What have I learned about myself is that I'm actually good at what I do. And I think a lot of us, we have this similar thing with the way we want to execute things and the way they need to look in our minds. And, being a moderator or a show host and all this, it's a big weight and a big responsibility. We can be hard on ourselves about it. And I really used to be just a little bit too hard on myself. But there are times when I go back and watch my own content and I'm like, dang, like that was good. Like, girl, you did that, okay? And there is nothing wrong with upping yourself, showing yourself love. And I'm learning to do that. And sometimes it comes, because there was times I wouldn't even rewatch my interviews. I didn't really care, or I would rewatch just to, pick apart the technical things. You should watch so that you can, but to sit and enjoy my own content and to learn from it and gain and grow and then be wowed by my own questions and conversations and what I was able to extract. I've learned that I'm good at what I do and I love myself and I'm happy that I have the opportunity to do it. And it's really nice to feel that way about me. So
I love that.
Yeah.
It takes me a while to watch my stuff. It takes me months, probably. I just don't like my voice. That's one thing.
I get it.
I learned that.
I
really don't like my voice. I'm like, I don't like it. But anyway, enough about me. Xavier or Jason?
I'll say that there's a whole lot I don't know about people. There's a whole lot I don't know about certain topics, and I think that's super exciting in a lot of ways. I really feel that. I feel I'll prepare and I'll read and I'll do all this, and I'm like, wow, I learn all this stuff from conversation. And I guess I don't know if I've learned this. I guess it's been reinforced, but I'm terribly long-winded. And I've learned that on the podcast. Even if I'm not saying anything, I can there's this kind of endurance and stamina I have, where I can just, try and flush out an idea, for literally hours. And it's been interesting to kind of see that kind of, I guess, on display. So yeah, those are the things I've learned.
Awesome. Love it. You're not long-winded, but go ahead. Jason?
I've learned how much values actually sit at the center of the identity that I want to construct for myself, and not like any other nominal features like religion or race or age or any like other detail. Like I feel like what I want to like come through in a podcast, or at least like be the foundation for whatever I say, are like values. And I don't know if I've necessarily like cemented my values. I feel like there's still a little bit in formation, but like there's a great process of like continually reflecting and asking myself, like, why am I doing what I'm doing? Like, why do I want to approach a particular conversation or a particular topic in a certain way, you know? So yeah, I think that's teaching me a lot about my values. And yeah, and I guess to echo the others, yeah, there's definitely like a humbling effect of like I end up I've learned that I'm very small in the way of like my understanding of the world and all the viewpoints that are out there. It's like it just always seems like there's something else that's that I've never considered, or some other piece of information that I've never heard, or you know. So that's always like it's refreshing actually. It kind of motivates me to keep going.
I love that. I love all your answers. I agree. And I really appreciate this conversation. This has been therapeutic for me. I don't know how y'all feel, but sometimes you can feel alone in this space. And it's good that it's not that I'm like, oh, it's good that they're struggling too. No, but it's good. Like
Podcasters Anonymous. Podcasters Anonymous.
Misery loves company.
Podcasters
Let
Anonymous.
me get them together. Let's just talk. But no, I'm glad I got this bunch together. I knew you guys would bring a lot of insight to this discussion. And I'm glad this was a vibe for me. And this was fun. So everyone at home, thank you for having this conversation. Jaimi, Michael, Xavier, Jason, thank you so much. And everyone at home, their socials, even though we don't like social media, but their socials, their podcasts, their YouTube channels will be in the description link below. And thank you so much for tuning in to America's Shade, and see you in the next episode. Peace, peace, peace.